Hello everyone, Jarrett with PMI Riverside here, and today I'm going to go over the top 5 mistakes that I see landlords make on a day-to-day basis. This video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to break down each mistake in sections and go over them as thoroughly as I can. I've written down a lot of notes about things, so if you see me go look down this way, I'm looking at a Google Doc just to kind of go over the notes. I've heard a lot of different things through other property managers as well as landlords, so there's going to be a lot of information here. Okay. All right. Mistake number 1, being too greedy with rent. So rent control. This is one of the most important topics that I usually debate with about to all of my owners. There are a couple of different times where a landlord can really be too greedy for their own good, right? So this kind of starts in the pre-leasing phase, which is where the first instance of that landlord or owner greed can take place. You're probably going to hear me say owner a lot of the times. When I say owner, I mean landlord. It's just what we say when we say landlord. It's usually for us, it's owner. Okay? So this is a time where owners are supposed to research their property's market value, whether they have a rental analysis done from a professional company or they just look at comparable homes in the area. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, these numbers end up being wrong or they end up being too high due to the owner just not really going off of the research. For example, right, if you were to get a $3,542 rental analysis and you put the property for rent at $3,750, that's being too greedy, right? That's not really going to be able to get that property rented for a very long time, usually. Folks, listen, the best piece of advice that I can really give you here is make the property low and affordable for both you and your tenant, right? If you see $30,542, make it $35,000, hell, make it $34,000. The faster you rent the property, the less money you lose, and the less money you lose is more money you make, right? It's pretty simple. Next phase, where owners get too greedy, that I see a lot is during lease renewal negotiations as well as the yearly rent increase phase. So, folks, this is definitely one of the most important pieces to the puzzle of being a successful landlord. You're figuring out whether or not the property is worth more or less than what you are currently charging and adjusting your rent as such. So, if your market value is about $3,500 and you're renting out the place for $3,550, you really don't need to raise it another 10% and risk losing the tenant that's already in the property that's paying above market value, right? So don't raise the rent. Now, I'm definitely going to do a little bit more of a deep dive on this subject at a later date, but for right now, I'm just going to move on to mistake number 2, which is not allowing pets in your rental property. So, not allowing pets in your rental property can really screw you over. I know pets in your rentals, allowing them can seem really scary, especially if you're a victim of that previous pet damage. But let me assure you that if a pet is going to cause damage to a property, it's usually the tenant's fault and not the pet's, right? That dog or cat only has those bad habits because their owner lets them have it. Now, I mean, it's not much you can really do about that, but you can really correct it and you can stop it. So let's talk about why you should let a pet in the property, right? A recent survey done this year showed that 66% of households in the United States own a pet. So if you don't allow pets, you lose out on over 60% of your potential tenants. Also, it isn't like they won't just get a pet anyways, right? If somebody has a pet, they could just say that they don't have a pet, and what are you going to do? You can't really check, which is why I recommend petscreening.com. But that's a story for a later day. Anyways, if you don't allow pets and they get one without you knowing, you didn't get the chance to get extra security deposit for that pet or charge extra on that rent, which is what we recommend. $300 security deposit extra and $30 of raised rent per pet. Now, when you do that, allowing pets can actually give you a lot more insurance, right? So you get an additional deposit, and it allows you to have a quicker leasing process, allows you to charge more rent, gives you better morale with your tenants. They're more likely to stay longer. They're more likely to renew their lease. All around, it's a lot better, and I highly, highly recommend that you allow pets in the property. Number 3, being too cheap with vendors. This is one of the worst mistakes that I see landlords make day in and day out. Listen, getting cheap work done will be more expensive in the long run than hiring someone who is at a higher price. Odds are the person with the higher price does better work, is more qualified, and better to work with. Not only that, the work that they will do will last a longer period of time, keeping your tenants happier and more likely to stay in the property for a longer period of time, like I just said. I think I had somebody say to me a very long time ago that I really, really enjoyed was the cheap work usually ends up being more expensive than the expensive work, right? If somebody does a porch for you and they charge $2,000 and somebody else could have done the exact same porch, but they charge $5,000, what happens when that porch goes out and you have to the $2,000 porch goes out and you have to pay somebody else to do another porch, and then you charge $2,000 again, and then every year the porch keeps going out and you keep having to spend $2,000 when you could have just done the $5,000 the first time and not have to keep doing this issue. That's the best way that I could really put that, right? Try and find the best person to do it and don't care about the price as much as about the quality of work. Anyways, mistake number 4. This one is a little bit different because in the context of being a landlord, it's more so for a landlord who is using a property management company. And it's something that I highly recommend every landlord does, not just using a professional property management company, but maybe even just asking for professional guidance or advice can be a very massive benefit to you, and it can really save you from a lot of potential headaches, right? I mean, the other side of this is it's hard, especially if you're hiring a property management company. You can't be in control. That is one of the biggest reasons why I recommend maybe not hiring a property management company. Is if you were really, really fond of having that control over your property, I would maybe recommend not going with a property management company. Because when you want them to succeed, you have to be able to trust them enough to give them the reins, right? We have to be able to handle maintenance, we have to handle leasing, we have to handle marketing the property, we have to handle showing the property, the lease agreements, we have to handle all this different stuff. And when you're working with a PM company, it's really dependent on, well, I guess from my side, it's dependent on the owner allowing us to have the tools for us to succeed, right? We can't properly do our job unless the owner or landlord allows us to. And I don't really want you to waste your money on a service that you don't need, especially if you don't feel comfortable enough to use it. I mean, if you don't, say you have a current PM company, right? And you don't trust them fully, you really shouldn't be using them or allowing them to make decisions for you. You should probably be self-managing, or you should just, I guess, learn how to not be a control freak. That sounds really bad to say, but it usually will either cost you money in the long run or just give you a lot more stress and affect your mental health that way. So yeah, don't hesitate to ask for professional guidance or advice, but also in the same sense, don't be afraid to give up a little bit more control if you're using a property management company. Okay, cool. Number 5, the biggest one for me at least, leasing. So the final mistake that I see a lot of landlords make is in their leasing process, right? Definitely a lot of different things that you can make a mistake in during the leasing process. I'm just going to go over a couple of them here today, and maybe on a different video, I will go over every single one, as thoroughly as possible. So starting off in this leasing process would be the pricing points, right? As we just went over, a lot of the times leasing processes take a lot longer due to the fact that the landlord doesn't know what the rental market value of their property is, or it's just too high. It sucks because our average personal day. So I'm just going to kind of, this is not a plug or anything like that. I'm just letting you know from a professional property management company, 56 doors, our average days on the market is around 14. And that's usually what I would say is the normal amount of time it takes for a house to get rented. If everything is in good condition, it's priced correctly, and you did everything right, about 14 days. If it's taking longer than that, odds are 90% of the time, if it's taking, say, maybe more than 2 months for it to rent out, you're definitely doing something wrong, okay? Whether it not be having enough pictures, not having the correct price point. Either way, that property is losing you out, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, losing you a lot of money each and every day it sits on the market. Okay, especially after the first 30 days. If it's after 30 days, it really sucks because if you have a $3,500 property that's supposed to be at 3,300 or 32, and it's out in the market for 30 days, you lost $3,500 when you could have just had it in 14 days and you only would have lost 1,600 because it would have been at 32. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the biggest mistake. The second one would be showing the property as efficiently as possible, right? Show it as often as possible, but as effectively as you can. Don't do it 7 days a week to one person at a time. Maybe 2 to 3 days out of the week to more than 2 people or more than one person at a time. Personally, what we do is 2 days a week ish. More than one person always, almost usually. If it's sitting on the property or if it's sitting on the market for a little bit longer than we would like, we would show it as often as we possibly can. But usually that never happens. So, yeah. Anyways, that's kind of the end of this video, guys. If you learned anything, I would really appreciate it if you would just like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot and gives me a lot more motivation to create content like this. Yeah, I mean, this was pretty thorough as I could get. I definitely am going to go in more depth on each and every single one of these mistakes in the next couple of weeks. But either way, that is the end. So have a good one, guys.